Hey everybody, welcome to Connected Live. As you can see, Jenny and I are on the road and we are headed back home from having been to Antler, Oklahoma, where Arrow was born, and we were actually successful today, having been able to spread Arrow's ashes where Arrow wanted. So I kind of want to reiterate to everybody that Arrow and I had an agreement when he said if I ever got sick, and I explained what a horse hospital looked like, he said no way. He was a Mustang, so he was like no. He said when I get sick, then you're going to have to help me pass. And so that happened in March on my birthday, as you guys know, my 50th birthday. And I did kind of everything Arrow wanted. We found out through his people. It's very poignant that Jenny is with me today, because Jenny found me online looking for Arrow's people. And that's how this whole thing started, and how this California, Hollywood, New Jersey girl ended up living in Oklahoma because the horse wanted to come home. And his final request after he passed on was that he wanted to be his ashes spread where he was born. We have an interesting little story about that we'd like to share from the experience. I've got some pictures and some video, and I'll post them a little bit later. But it was really interesting. I was trying to figure out why all the angst about getting him to wear his ashes. Like, this horse was a very intelligent horse, articulate horse. I guess one of his messages, besides getting his kin taken care of and trying to get a sanctuary together, was that other species have hopes, dreams, wants. They feel everything we feel, but within the context of their species. So they're not human, but that doesn't mean they don't have feelings and hopes and dreams. After we filmed the documentary with Arrow in December, it hit Arrow that while for 6 years I did everything in my power to make him whole, he was never going to recapture everything that he lost and how he was treated. And there was a sadness that came with that he could never really put together. He could never wrap his head around it. It kind of finished him off, if you will, like he'd come full circle. And so here he is, having passed, he's about to pass on, and I asked him what he wanted, and he said he wanted his remains at Bryant's farm. And I couldn't figure out, well, your spirit doesn't matter, like, where you are, like, the ashes are just ash. But he was very, very specific about it. So I'm going to let Jenny talk for a little bit, because y'all know I'm crazy. I'm a healer. I talk to animals. I do energetic work, and I refer to myself lovingly as crazy. But it's hard for some people to really believe all these weird things that happen with the animal stories, with the client stories. So I'll let Jenny, who knows the horses and the breed and Bryant's herd better than anybody. They're on big pasture behind his house. Over what, 200 acres, you said?
Something like that, yeah.
There's over 200 acres there. So we go out in the middle of the day and it's hot. And I'm going to let Jenny tell the rest of the story so that you guys can hear it from an observer that's pretty impartial.
Yeah, so after we get down and we visited a few minutes with Darlene and Bryant Rickman, we decided to go out back down into one of the pastures behind their place and spread his ashes. And this is a large pasture with...
Exactly, but go back and tell what Bryant said while we were around the kitchen table about his mother. They're not sure, like he went back and forth.
Yeah, he was telling us that he wasn't, in going back and trying to think exactly where Arrow had been born years ago, he said that they'd actually brought Arrow's mother back from his mother's property, which was still connected to a piece of his land and you can access it underneath the turnpike there that the horses would travel back and forth. So we had discussed going to that area to spread his ashes versus there at the main house where we had Arrow in December. So in the end we decided no, we would just go out back where we had originally, felt that that's where we should go. And so we go out into this large pasture, and it's not your typical big open pasture. This is southeastern Oklahoma. You've got trees everywhere. You can't see. It's thick, dense brush. And it was 12:30 in the afternoon. Not an hour that horses are going to be up around the house. Typically they're, fed. They feed in the evenings or they feed early in the morning. So it's just not a normal time of the day for the horses to be up, just standing out in the middle, out of the trees and in the wide open. So as we're walking down into the pasture, the first horses that we encountered just out of nowhere was a group with some of the relatives, so to speak, of Arrow. One in particular.
Yeah, I'm going to interject.
Yeah.
So the main stallion, that is one of Bryant's two dominants, that's the one that in the footage for the documentary you'll see challenging Arrow while Arrow was with Bryant. His name is Tuscaloosa. He's in all black as well. And as we walk out, Tuscaloosa is coming at us from the trees and bringing Arrow's doppelganger.
Yeah, which is I believe one of his sons. But and this is a colt that we met whenever we were there in December. Looks like a carbon copy of Arrow, aside from the snip on his nose.
Right.
Yeah, so, just everything about him is Arrow, except for that one little thing. And these are the first two horses that come right up out of the trees as soon as we walk out. And they just come right up to us and kind of, sniffing, making, checking us out, seeing what we're doing. And as we go deeper into the pasture to where we wanted, to be, the more and more of these different little bands of horses start coming up. Now, we hadn't called anybody. We hadn't, rattled buckets. We were not making any noise other than just talking amongst ourselves as we walk through the pasture. But as we go further in, there are just more and more horses. And I've been there many times whenever Bryant is feeding or, we're just out there talking. Whenever all these horses get together from these different little bands, there are scuffles, we have nickering, everybody's kicking each other, everybody's chasing each other. That was not happening. Everybody was just kind of a calm, relaxed, just kind of coming up, checking us out, and just watching.
And it was something also poignant about that in life. Arrow, whenever we went to a new barn, everybody knows, you go to a new barn, and when a horse shows up that's new, there's usually a lot of noise in the barn when a new horse comes in. And it was just Arrow. Arrow had this calming effect. Every single new barn we ever came into was quiet and calm when Arrow came in. And so here we are, spreading his ashes, what remains of him, and all these horses, many of them that are not handled. They're not only coming up to us and sniffing, strangers, because Jenny and I are strangers. Bryant isn't, but we are. And they're peaceful.
Right.
Keep going.
And it was very unusual. Like I said, I've been down there, and they just don't. Everybody doesn't just come up and stand still. But that's kind of what they were doing. And as I'm guessing, eventually we'll see the video that I shot. of it, and you can see, I mean, the horses, as you know, we kind of picked our spot, and as Gabby spread his ashes, the horses literally made a circle around us and just stood and watched. And I mean, she's waving a plastic sack, and there's ash rolling out of it, and the horses are just standing there as calm as can be, just watching. And this happened.
At one point I thought, oh, they might think I'm spreading feed, because sometimes, you know, you throw out feed. They knew it wasn't feed.
No, they just all stood there, and as you know, as she got done, a couple of them stepped forward, being the little doppelganger, to right where the ashes lay on the ground, and, you know, sniffed around and kind of backed up, and they just kind of took turns really doing that. And it was very neat to watch. You know, it was almost like they were paying respect to Arrow. You know, he had been there prior to, you know, in December. He had been in that pasture.
He met all of them.
And interacted with a lot of those horses. And even, you know, Bryant said several times, you know, a lot of these horses, they just don't have a lot of interaction with people, especially outside people. You know, and for them to be, they didn't just come up and stand 20 feet away. They were standing right with us. You know, you could reach out and touch all of them, and they weren't ones that, you know, just would freely go up to anyone for any reason whatsoever. They would have, you know, typically have stood back and observed, even if you were out there feeding. So it was pretty neat.
It was like we had a service.
Right. And as soon as we were done,
they left.
Yeah. They just all kind of gravitated away from where we were and went on about their deal.
Yeah, and even Bryant said they all came in for the service, and now the service is over and it's done. And I just kind of sat there gobsmacked. Like, it's not like I made an energetic phone call and said, hey, y'all, we're coming down for Arrow's funeral. Mm-hmm. We literally walk out the back gate, and there's Tuscaloosa coming up with Arrow's doppelganger and a new foal and the mare that's related to Arrow's lineage. And then the rest of them just all started coming up. And it was just, you know, it was hot. They were coming out of their cool areas where they hide during the day. I mean, it was just really... You have to understand there's something bigger than out there that connects us all. How did they know we were coming? How did they know to come up at that time? It wasn't feeding. There's an energy that connected all of us, and that moment was created because of that energy. And to see them all sniffing the ground in a circle, and those horses knew that was the body of one of theirs, and they were paying their last respects. And we had a little bit of a breeze, and it picked the ash up and blew it away from us, and everything felt so peaceful. So it was an amazing moment. It was full circle. I think the biggest message that Arrow had in wanting his ashes, like, he was very specific, as they were saying, well, his mother used to run back to this place and that place, and the mother used to run and take Arrow with her, you know, so it may be we put him over there because that's where he was actually born and where his mother liked to go. And I just very, very keenly heard Arrow energetically saying, I want to be with Bryant. Put my ashes out back. And it was just like, that's the way it was supposed to be. And once we did it, everything was peaceful. So I'm really grateful for all these friendships that came out of Arrow. But for Arrow, I wouldn't have come to Oklahoma. I wouldn't have all the friends that I have here now. My LA friends have been wonderful. They've all stayed in touch with me. My friends in New Jersey have all stayed in touch. Because of my connections here, One of Arrow's nephews went to New Jersey with a dear friend, so he's safe up there. So many interesting connections, and so, sorry, my ADD took a hold. I think Arrow wanted to be with Bryant because in the end it's all about love. In the end it's all about, I know Bryant feels really bad for having sold him. He could have never known what was going to happen from that sale, but the people never told him that they couldn't handle him, and then he went to an auction and went to somebody else, and then he went missing, and the stolen part occurred. So he never got a chance to get his horse back because they couldn't be honorable about it, said we can't handle this horse, we want to give him back. So then started Arrow's massive decline, and I think Arrow really wanted Bryant to know that he wasn't angry, that in the end it was just love, and he wanted to be placed where he was born. And I said to Bryant, I guess this is the longest missing horse you've ever had come home. And Bryant said, you know what, you're right. I've never had a horse come back after 19 years.
Yeah.
So I think it wasn't just it. I was trying to figure out why this was so important for me to do, and I was like, well, I know he can go anywhere he wants. He's a spirit. He's not here. Why is this physical ash thing so important? And Jenny and I were mulling it, and then Jenny said, maybe this is more to do with Bryant and about love and about forgiveness, so that Bryant knows Arrow still loved him, that Arrow knew it wasn't his fault, and that Bryant takes all of these horses and their care so seriously, and it weighs on him every time something goes wrong. And you want other people to enjoy the horses, and you want to propagate their numbers, because there's so few of the Oklahoma heritage horses, the Spanish colonial horses of this ilk. So you want other people to have them, it's just other people don't have the same ethics or integrity or morality. And he feels that weight. I mean, I watched his face today, and I wanted to make sure that Bryant knew this is not about focusing on what went wrong, because it wasn't his fault. It was focusing about love, that this horse wanted to come home to where his kin was and where Bryant was. So, Jenny, what's the name of Bryant's 501c3 again?
It is the Oklahoma Heritage Horse Sanctuary.
Okay. So the Oklahoma Heritage Horse Sanctuary is Bryant's 501c3. There are some individuals out there passing themselves off as, doing what Bryant does. That is the only one that is Bryant's, that goes back to Gilbert Jones. I don't care who's saying what. You guys have always known me to be very straight about stuff like this, so please pay attention only to Bryant Rickman. Like his personal page, like his pages for the horses. Always look for pictures of him and that particular name, because that's the only one he's affiliated with.
Yeah, it'll be Rickman Spanish Mustangs or Oklahoma Heritage Horse Sanctuary.
So those two only. And if you donate, only donate through those two places, because those monies go directly to Bryant so he can take care of the horses. And like many of the other rescues that I love and work with, like Rescue Me Incorporated, the Tibetan Mastiff Rescue in Beverly Hills, Melissa Bacelar's rescue with her dogs over at the Wagmore Hotel. The money goes to the animals, and Bryant is, every penny goes to these horses, and there's only 300 left. That's it. So please donate, please spread the word, please follow his pages, and know that when I promote him, it's because I trust and I know that money gets put to use for those horses. So thank you again. I'm not going to say this is an ending because it really isn't. Arrow's life is over, his physical life, but his mission and purpose still remains, and it remains through Jack and William. And William will continue to do a lot of public things. We're going to try to reach out to the National Cowboy Museum and see if they'll have Bryant up there for a talk or have the horses. Apparently Gilbert Jones used to do a lot with the Cowboy Museum. So if anybody knows anybody at the Cowboy Museum, the National Cowboy Museum, they need to have Bryant as a guest, do a talk, maybe do the photographs, pieces of artwork, photography that have been done for the horses, do an exhibition there to raise awareness. There's so little time left. So Arrow's legacy is to continue this mission and purpose to protect his kin, a sanctuary of 1,000 acres with a museum attached to it, breeding program, help for Bryant to have all the horses in one place, staff. I mean, all that stuff needs to get done. And we don't have a lot of time. Bryant's doing them all by himself. So it's a continuation of Arrow's legacy. And the documentary is coming along. It's in the process of being edited for all those who know about Arrow's documentary. And Heidi and I are also in the process of writing a children's book about Arrow, kind of with me as the little girl, a little bit modeled after me and Arrow's and my relationship. Jenny is going to do the artwork for it. I volunteered her by surprise at lunch while we were with Bryant and Darlene. And so we want, again, to help the horses through the children's book. So thank you, everybody, for following not only myself. Jenny, also, I'm going to let you kind of pass your news along, if you will. You're getting things together on your property. Jenny has some of Bryant's horses from that lineage on her property. And she's kind of getting Red Dirt Choctaw's page redone, the website redone to keep track of all those horses. William Sire Blue is with Jenny. So that's also going to be connected there. So we'll have more news in the future of some plans that we have. Thank you all for following us on this Connected Live. Thank you for following my work. If you need help with your animals, with their health or your health, you can find me at healertv.com, just as it sounds, HEALERTV.com. I'll post a link for it in the comments once I get this up. And thank you all again for following Arrow. It meant a lot to him, and it continues to mean a lot. And we have Jack and William carrying on for him, and lots of his relatives still alive that need to be tended to. So thanks again, everybody. We'll see you soon. We're driving safe. I have my mirrored sunglasses on, but I'm actually not looking at the camera. I'm looking at the road. So we just wanted to do a quick one while we were on the road home. So thank you again, and we'll talk soon. And if you'll do the little Facebook boop on the finish.
We're here.
Yep, there you go.